an original narrative, created especially for Shadows of Love. Alessandra Morgan stood motionless before her father's casket, her black dress absorbing the October rain like grief absorbing her resolve. The Chicago skyline loomed through the cemetery's wrought iron gates, a city that had once trembled at her father's name, now indifferent to his passing. Behind her, mourners dispersed in hushed clusters, their whispers carrying fragments of a legacy dismantled. Only she knew why she had returned after 6 years of self-imposed exile. Not to bury her father, but to destroy the man who had orchestrated his downfall. Dominic Salvatore. The name burned in her mind as she placed a single white rose on the polished mahogany. In her purse, a carefully forged resume and recommendation letters, her weapons for infiltrating his empire. Tomorrow, she would walk into the Salvatore building for her interview, wearing a different name and carrying the weight of a vendetta that had consumed half her life. The rain had stopped by the time Alessandra left the cemetery, but the chill remained, seeping through her coat as she made her way to her rental car. Chicago hadn't changed. Still the same imposing skyline, the same hurried pedestrians, the same undercurrent of power that pulsed through its streets. But she had changed. The frightened girl who had fled 6 years ago was gone. "Goodbye, Papa," she whispered, glancing back at the small gathering of mourners, mostly old business associates paying their respects to a fallen king. Her father, Vincent Morgan, had once been Chicago's most respected businessman, at least on paper. Behind the legitimate ventures was a network of influence that had made the Morgan name both feared and revered. Until Dominic Salvatore had systematically dismantled it all. As she drove through familiar streets, memories flooded back, particularly of that night. She had been 18, preparing for college, when their world imploded. The frantic phone calls, her father's ashen face, the hurried packing. "We've been betrayed," he had told her mother. "Salvatore's made his move." Within hours, their assets were frozen. By morning, federal agents swarmed their estate. By nightfall, they were sheltering in a distant cousin's guest house, their names synonymous with disgrace. Her father never recovered. The heart attack that finally claimed him seemed merely a formality. Dominic Salvatore had killed him 6 years earlier. Alessandra parked outside her hotel and checked her appearance in the rearview mirror. Tomorrow, she would become Alessandra Russo, an experienced executive assistant with impeccable references, all fabricated with the help of her brother Marco's connections. Marco, who had remained in Chicago, watching Salvatore's rise from the shadows, planting the seeds for her return. "It's set," Marco had told her over the phone last week. "Salvatore's assistant is leaving. The agency will put your resume on top. Just be ready." In her hotel room, Alessandra spread her documents across the bed, her new identity meticulously crafted. Alessandra Russo had worked for executives in New York. Alessandra Russo was efficient, discreet, and had no connection to the Morgan family. Alessandra Russo was her ticket into Salvatore's inner circle. She studied Dominic Salvatore's photograph from a recent business magazine. At 45, he looked more like a corporate titan than a man who had clawed his way up through Chicago's underworld. His dark hair showed touches of silver at the temples, and his eyes, calculating and intense, seemed to assess her through the glossy page. "I'm coming for you," she whispered. Morning brought a flawless autumn day, crisp and bright, a stark contrast to Alessandra's mood as she entered the gleaming Salvatore building. The lobby was a testament to tasteful opulence. Marble floors, subtle lighting, and a massive reception desk where she announced herself. "Alessandra Russo. I have an interview with Human Resources." The interview itself was surprisingly ordinary. The HR director, a precise woman named Evelyn, seemed impressed with Alexandra's credentials. "Mr. Salvatore is quite particular," Evelyn explained. "His previous assistant was with him for 7 years. He values loyalty above all else." Ironic, Alessandra thought, considering how he'd betrayed her father. "I understand completely," she replied. "Discretion and loyalty are essential in positions like these. If you're selected, you'll need to meet with Mr. Salvatore personally. He makes the final decision on all executive staff." 2 days later, the call came. Alessandra was to meet Dominic Salvatore that afternoon. The executive floor was hushed, as if sound itself deferred to power. Alessandra was escorted to a waiting area outside Salvatore's office, her heart hammering against her ribs. Years of planning, and now just a door separated her from her father's destroyer. When that door finally opened, she wasn't prepared for the visceral impact of his presence. Dominic Salvatore was taller than she expected, his shoulders broad beneath an impeccably tailored suit. But it was his eyes that caught her. Dark, penetrating, missing nothing. "Ms. Russo," he said, his voice a low, controlled timbre that suggested he rarely needed to raise it. "Please come in." His office was surprisingly understated. No ostentatious displays of wealth, just clean lines and a wall of windows overlooking the city. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Your references are impressive," he began, studying her with an intensity that made her wonder if her disguise was already compromised. "But they tell me what you can do, not who you are. I believe my work speaks for itself, Mr. Salvatore." A slight smile touched his lips. "In my experience, Ms. Russo, it's character that determines whether someone succeeds in this position. Technical skills can be learned. Integrity cannot." The irony nearly made her laugh. Integrity from the man who had destroyed her family. "I value loyalty and discretion above all else," he continued. "This position requires both. I understand. My previous employers would confirm I possess both qualities." He leaned back, still studying her. "There's something familiar about you." Her pulse quickened. "I have one of those faces, I suppose." "No," he said quietly. "I never forget a face." Then, with a slight shake of his head, he continued, "The position requires long hours, sometimes weekends. My business interests are diverse. I'm aware of your reputation, Mr. Salvatore." She kept her tone professional, betraying nothing of the hatred burning beneath. Something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, perhaps. "And yet, you're here." "I go where the opportunities are." He nodded, seemingly satisfied. "You'll start Monday. Evelyn will handle the paperwork." He stood, extending his hand. "Welcome to Salvatore Enterprises, Ms. Russo." When her hand met his, she felt an unexpected jolt. Not just the adrenaline of vengeance, but something else, something disturbing in its intensity. His grip was firm, warm, his gaze holding hers a moment too long. "Thank you for the opportunity," she managed. As she left the building, triumph mingled with unease. She was in, closer to Salvatore than anyone in her family had been since their fall. But that moment, that inexplicable tension when their eyes met, had shaken her more than she cared to admit. Back in her hotel room, she called Marco. "I got it," she said simply. "I never doubted you would," her brother replied. "Now we begin. Remember, Allie? We need evidence. Proof of his illegal operations, his connections, something concrete we can take to the right people." "I know what I'm doing, Marco." "Be careful. Salvatore didn't get where he is by being careless. If he suspects anything. She thought of those penetrating eyes, the way they'd seemed to look through her disguise. He won't, she said with more confidence than she felt. He'll never know what hit him until it's too late. But as she hung up, Alessandra couldn't shake the feeling that she'd stepped into something far more dangerous than she had anticipated. Not just because of the risks, but because of the unexpected complexity of the man himself. Dominic Salvatore wasn't the one-dimensional villain she'd constructed in her mind. And that made him infinitely more dangerous. 3 weeks into her position as Dominic Salvatore's executive assistant, Alessandra had established a routine. She arrived before him each morning, prepared his schedule, screened his calls, and maintained the careful distance of a professional. Yet proximity was changing things in ways she hadn't anticipated. Dominic Salvatore was not what she expected. The monster of her childhood memories was instead a man of surprising complexity, demanding yet fair with his employees, ruthlessly efficient in business, but unexpectedly thoughtful in small ways. He remembered birthdays, asked about family members, noticed when someone was struggling. "You're different from your predecessor," he remarked one evening as they worked late. "More observant?" She glanced up from her tablet. "In what way?" "You anticipate needs rather than just responding to them." His dark eyes studied her. "It's rare." "I pay attention," she said simply. "Yes," he murmured. "You do." These moments, brief exchanges where something unspoken passed between them, were becoming more frequent, more disquieting. Her nightly reports to Marco grew increasingly complex. Yes, she was gathering information, snippets of conversations, glimpses of documents, patterns of meetings. But she found herself qualifying her observations, contextualizing them. "There's more to him than we thought," she told Marco during one of their secure calls. "Don't tell me you're falling for his act," Marco scoffed. "Remember what he did to us, Allie, to Papa." "I remember," she said quietly. "I'm just saying it's complicated." Everything changed the night of the anniversary dinner. Salvatore Enterprises was celebrating 20 years, and Dominic had organized an exclusive gathering at Chicago's most prestigious restaurant. As his assistant, Alessandra was responsible for the details, and she accompanied him to ensure everything ran smoothly. She wore a simple black dress, elegant but understated. The perfect executive assistant, invisible yet indispensable. But Dominic's gaze when she met him in the lobby of his penthouse suggested she was anything but invisible. "You clean up well, Ms. Russo," he said, his eyes warming with appreciation. "Professional appearance is part of the job," she replied, fighting an unwelcome flush. The dinner proceeded perfectly. Chicago's elite raising glasses to Dominic's success, business associates praising his vision. Alessandra watched him work the room, charismatic and commanding. It was easy to see how he'd risen to power, harder to reconcile this man with the destroyer of her family. As the evening wound down, they stood side by side on the restaurant's terrace overlooking the city. 20 years, he mused. Sometimes it feels like yesterday I was fighting for scraps. "You've built something impressive," she admitted. He turned to her, his expression softening. "You've been instrumental these past weeks. I want you to know that." Before she could respond, a waiter approached. "Mr. Salvatore, your car is ready." As they moved toward the elevator, Alessandra noticed 2 men following, men who hadn't been at the dinner. Something in their posture, the way their jackets hung, sent alarm bells ringing. "Mr. Salvatore," she said quietly. I think the first shot shattered the window beside them. Dominic reacted instantly, shoving her behind a concrete pillar as he drew a weapon from beneath his jacket. "Stay down," he ordered, returning fire as the restaurant erupted in screams. Everything blurred into chaos. More shots, Dominic's security team materializing, his hand gripping hers as they ran through the kitchen and out a service entrance. His driver was waiting, engine running. "The lake house," Dominic ordered as they sped away. "We've been compromised." In the back of the car, his arms still around her protectively, Alessandra struggled to process what had happened. Who were they? Rivals, he said grimly, or someone's idea of justice. The irony wasn't lost on her. They drove for hours, eventually reaching a secluded estate on Lake Michigan. Snow had begun to fall, casting the world in silent white as they hurried inside. "We'll be safe here," Dominic said, securing the doors. "No one knows about this place except my most trusted people." The house was beautiful, rustic luxury with soaring windows facing the lake. Under other circumstances, Alessandra might have appreciated it. Now, she was too aware of her position, alone with the man she'd sworn to destroy, dependent on him for protection. "You should call your family," he said, handing her a secure phone. "Let them know you're safe." The gesture surprised her. "I don't have family," she lied. "Not close by, anyway." Something like understanding crossed his face. "Then, we have that in common." As the night deepened, the snow intensified, transforming the landscape into a pristine wilderness. They were effectively snowbound, the roads becoming impassable. Dominic built a fire while Alessandra found blankets. The domesticity of it was surreal. This man who had orchestrated her family's downfall now ensuring her comfort. "I'm sorry you were caught in this," he said, handing her a glass of whiskey. "My world is complicated. I'm beginning to see that." She accepted the drink, their fingers brushing. "You're taking it remarkably well. Most people would be hysterical after being shot at." She met his gaze steadily. "I'm not most people." "No," he agreed, something like admiration in his eyes. "You're not." Perhaps it was the adrenaline, or the whiskey, or the hypnotic effect of the fire, but the air between them changed, charged with something dangerous and inevitable. "Who are you really, Alessandra?" he asked softly. "Sometimes I look at you and see—" "What?" she whispered. "Someone familiar. Someone I've been waiting for without knowing it." He moved closer, his hand lifting to brush a strand of hair from her face. She should have pulled away, should have remembered her purpose, her promise. Instead, she remained still, heart racing as his fingers traced her cheekbone. "This is a mistake," she breathed, even as she leaned into his touch. "Probably," he agreed, and then his mouth was on hers. The kiss was gentle at first, almost questioning, then deepening as she responded despite herself. His arms encircled her, strong and secure, and for a suspended moment, she forgot everything. Who she was, why she was there, the blood debt between them. When they finally broke apart, reality came crashing back. She stepped away, confusion and guilt washing over her. "I can't," she said, voice unsteady. We can't." Dominic watched her, his expression unreadable. "Because I'm your boss?" "Because you destroyed my family," she thought. "Because my father warned me about you with his dying breath." "Because it complicates things," she said instead. He nodded slowly. "Get some rest, Alessandra. We'll figure this out in the morning." Alone in the guest room, Alessandra pressed her fingers to her lips, still warm from his kiss. What had she done? How had she allowed herself to feel this? This inexplicable pull toward the very man she'd sworn to bring down. "I'm sorry, Papa," she whispered into the darkness, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. "I don't know what's happening to me." Outside, the snow continued to fall, burying them deeper in their isolation, in the dangerous intimacy neither had anticipated. Morning arrived with blinding brightness, sunlight reflecting off snow-covered grounds surrounding the lake house. Alessandra woke disoriented, memories of the previous night rushing back, the attack, the escape, the kiss. Especially the kiss. She dressed quickly in clothes Dominic had provided. A sweater and jeans left by a previous guest, slightly too large but clean and warm. In the kitchen, she found him already awake, speaking quietly on his phone. "Make sure Gianelli understands the consequences," he was saying, his voice carrying that quiet authority that suggested violence without explicitly threatening it. He glanced up, seeing her, and his expression softened. "I'll call back." He disconnected. "Coffee?" he offered, gesturing to a freshly brewed pot. "Please." She accepted the mug he handed her, careful not to let their fingers touch. "Any news about what happened?" "The Gianelli family's making a play for some of my territory," he explained. "Last night was meant to send a message. Seems like an extreme message." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Welcome to my world, Alessandra. How long do we need to stay here?" "The roads should be clear by afternoon. My security team will meet us." He studied her over his coffee. "About last night." "We don't need to discuss it," she interrupted. "I disagree." He set his mug down. "I crossed a line. You work for me, and I put you in an uncomfortable position." The irony of Dominic Salvatore worrying about ethical boundaries wasn't lost on her. It was a high-stress situation. People do things they wouldn't normally do. Is that what it was for you? His dark eyes held hers. Just stress? No, she wanted to say. It was confusion and hatred and unexpected attraction, all tangled together in something she couldn't name. "It doesn't matter what it was," she said instead. "It can't happen again." He nodded slowly. "I respect that. But I think we both know there's something here. Something that started the moment you walked into my office." Before she could respond, his phone rang again. As he took the call, Alessandra wandered into the adjacent study, needing space to think. The room was clearly Dominic's private sanctuary. Bookshelves lined with classics and modern fiction. A heavy desk positioned to view the lake. On impulse, she moved behind the desk, running her fingers along its polished surface. This was an opportunity. While he was distracted, she could search for something, anything that might reveal his illegal operations. The desk drawers were locked, but a small key cabinet hung on the wall, partially hidden behind a painting. Heart racing, she quickly found a key that looked promising and tried it. The center drawer slid open, revealing folders and documents. She rifled through them quickly, property deeds, investment portfolios, nothing obviously incriminating. Then her eyes caught something else. A small safe built into the wall behind another painting. This was exactly the kind of hiding place that might contain what she needed. Glancing toward the door to ensure Dominic was still occupied, she examined the safe. It was electronic, requiring a code. On impulse, she tried his birth date. Information she'd learned while organizing his affairs. Nothing. Then she tried the date Salvatore Enterprises was founded. The safe clicked open. Inside was a single file folder, unlabeled. With trembling hands, she removed it flipping it open to find photographs and documents dating back 6 years to the time of her family's fall. What she saw made her blood run cold. Police reports, crime scene photos, a detailed account of a massacre at a warehouse, 12 men executed, and her father's signature on documents authorizing the hit. Vincent Morgan authorized the execution of 12 Salvatore associates, read one report. Informant confirms Morgan ordered the families eliminated as well, including Salvatore's sister and her children. Alessandra felt the room spin. This couldn't be right. Her father, the man who had taught her about honor and family, had ordered the murder of women and children. Find anything interesting? She whirled to find Dominic standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Words failed her. Go ahead, he said quietly. You've come this far. With shaking hands, she continued reading. The next document was a transcript of a wiretapped conversation between her father and one of his lieutenants, discussing the cleanup after the warehouse hit. The casual cruelty in her father's words was unmistakable. This can't be true, she whispered. But it is. Dominic moved into the room, taking the file from her hands. Vincent Morgan ordered the execution of my men during a supposed peace meeting. When that wasn't enough, he targeted their families. My sister and her children were supposed to be at their home that night. His voice remained steady, but she could hear the controlled rage beneath. They survived only because I'd moved them the day before, acting on a tip. So you destroyed him, Alessandra said, her voice hollow. You took everything. I did what was necessary to protect what was mine. He studied her face. But you already knew that part of the story, didn't you? Alessandra? Her heart stopped. What did you call me? Alessandra Morgan. He set the file down. Vincent's daughter. Did you really think I wouldn't recognize you? Your eyes are exactly like his. The world seemed to tilt beneath her feet. How long have you known? Since your interview. I was curious what Vincent Morgan's daughter wanted with me, so I let you in. Kept you close. To what end? Initially, to find out if you were part of some revenge plot. Your brother Marco has been trying to rebuild your father's network for years. She flinched at Marco's name, confirming his suspicion. What I didn't expect, Dominic continued, was to find myself drawn to you, despite knowing exactly who you are. Alessandra felt tears threatening. Everything she'd believed, about her father, about Dominic, about her purpose here, was crumbling. My father told me you betrayed him, she said, voice breaking, that you destroyed our family out of greed. Is that what he said? Dominic's laugh held no humor. Vincent Morgan was planning to eliminate me and take control of my territory. The only reason he failed was because I struck first, legally, through federal investigations and financial pressure. I could have had him killed a dozen times. I chose not to. Why? His eyes held hers. Because despite everything, he was once my friend. And because I knew he had children who didn't deserve to lose their father. The irony was devastating. But we lost him anyway. He was never the same after you took everything. I took his empire, Alessandra, not his family, not his chance to start over. That was his choice. She sank into a chair, the weight of revelation crushing her. I've spent 6 years hating you. And now? Now I don't know what to think, or who to believe. Dominic knelt before her, taking her hands in his. Believe what you see in that file. Believe that your father was a complicated man, capable of both love for his family and terrible cruelty to others. Like you? She whispered. Yes, he admitted. like me. We're not so different, Vincent and I. Except in one crucial way. I never targeted innocents. The tears came then, hot and unstoppable. Years of certainty, of righteous anger dissolved in the face of uncomfortable truth. Her father, the martyr in her mind, had been the aggressor. The man she'd sworn to destroy had shown more mercy than her own blood. "What happens now?" she asked when she could speak again. "That depends on you." Dominic's thumb brushed away a tear from her cheek. "Your cover is blown. Your mission, whatever it was, has failed. But perhaps something else has been found in its place." "What?" "Truth," he said simply. "And maybe, if you're willing, a new beginning." As she looked into his eyes, the eyes of her father's enemy, the man she'd kissed in firelight, Alessandra felt the foundations of her world shifting, realigning around a new center. Nothing would ever be the same. The drive back to Chicago was silent. Both of them lost in thought as the snow-covered landscape gave way to the industrial outskirts of the city. Dominic's security detail, 3 discreet but heavily armed men, followed in another vehicle. "What will you tell my brother?" Alessandra finally asked as the skyline came into view. Dominic glanced at her. "That depends on what you tell him." The question hung between them. Where did her loyalties lie now? With the brother who shared her blood and her 6-year vendetta? Or with the man who had shown her the uncomfortable truth? "I need time," she said finally, "to process everything." "Time is a luxury in my world," Dominic replied, but his tone was gentle. "Marco Morgan isn't known for his patience." "You've been watching him." "Of course. He's been trying to rebuild your father's network for years. Small-time operations mostly, but growing bolder." She hadn't known the extent of Marco's activities, had deliberately avoided knowing, focusing instead on her own mission to infiltrate Dominic's organization. "I won't let him hurt you," she said suddenly, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. Dominic's expression softened. "Careful, Alessandra. That sounds dangerously close to choosing sides." Before she could respond, his phone rang. The brief conversation that followed changed everything. "We've been compromised," he said after hanging up. "Someone accessed the security system at my penthouse. We need to change course." Instead of returning to the city center, they diverted to a nondescript building in an industrial area. Inside, Dominic led her to a sparse but secure apartment. "We'll stay here tonight," he explained. "My team will sweep the penthouse, make sure it's clean." Alone in the safe house, the tension between them shifted, becoming something else entirely. Without the distractions of the outside world, there was only this. The undeniable pull that had been growing since that first interview. "I should hate you," she said quietly, as they sat across from each other in the sparsely furnished living room. "Many do," he replied, "with good reason. But I don't." She met his gaze. "Even before I saw those files, something wasn't adding up. The man I've come to know these past weeks doesn't match the monster my father described. I'm no saint, Alessandra. Neither was he, apparently." The bitterness in her voice surprised her. Dominic moved to sit beside her, his proximity both comforting and unsettling. "Your father loved you. Never doubt that. The man I knew would have done anything to protect his children. Except tell us the truth." She looked up at him. "Why did you let me get so close, knowing who I was, what I might be planning?" "At first, strategy. Keep your enemies closer, as they say." His fingers brushed hers. "And then, because I couldn't stay away from you if I tried. The kiss this time was different. longer confused or hesitant, but deliberate. A choice. His hands framed her face with surprising gentleness, and she found herself responding with an intensity that should have frightened her. Later, tangled in sheets in each other, Alessandra felt the last pieces of her old life falling away. Whatever happened next, there was no going back. Morning came with harsh reality in the form of her phone vibrating with Marco's number. "Where have you been?" her brother demanded when she answered. "I've been trying to reach you for 2 days. There was an incident at Salvatore's anniversary dinner," she explained carefully. "A shooting. We had to go to ground." "We?" Marco's voice sharpened. "You're with him now?" "He's my boss, Marco. I was doing my job." "Your job is to get information we can use against him, not play bodyguard." Her brother's frustration was evident. "This is perfect, though. If you're with him, you're in position." "Position for what?" "I'm making my move, Allie. Tonight, I need to know exactly where he'll be." Cold dread washed over her. "What are you planning?" "Justice," Marco said simply. "For Papa. For all of us." "Marco, wait. Just text me his location. I'll handle the rest." He hung up. Alessandra stared at the phone, heart pounding. Marco was planning to kill Dominic tonight, and he expected her to help. When Dominic emerged from the shower, he found her pale and shaking. "What's happened?" he asked immediately. "Marco called?" She looked up at him, conflict evident in her eyes. "He's planning something tonight. Against you." Dominic's expression hardened. "And he wants your help." It wasn't a question, but she nodded anyway. "He wants to know where you'll be." "And what will you tell him?" The moment stretched between them, weighted with consequence. This was it. The choice she'd been avoiding since discovering the truth about her father. "Nothing," she said finally. "I won't help him hurt you." Relief flickered across Dominic's face, quickly replaced by determination. "We need to move. If Marco's making his play, we need to be ready." As they prepared to leave the safe house, Dominic's phone rang again. The news was worse than they could have imagined. "Marco's men have taken control of the riverfront warehouse," he reported grimly. "They're holding 3 of my people hostage, including my cousin Anthony." "Oh God," Alessandra whispered. "This is my fault. If I hadn't come back, if I hadn't gotten involved—" "This was always coming," Dominic interrupted. "Marco's been building toward this for years. You were just a piece of his plan." Her phone buzzed with a text from Marco. "Where is he?" Running out of patience. "He's going to kill your people if I don't deliver you," she realized. Dominic's jaw tightened. "Then we give him what he wants." "No, I won't let you sacrifice yourself." "I'm not planning to die today," he assured her, checking his weapon. "But we need to end this, now, before more blood is spilled." "We?" His eyes met hers. "I won't ask you to choose between your brother and me. That's not fair to you." But she already had chosen, she realized. The moment she'd warned Dominic instead of helping Marco, she'd made her decision. "He's my brother," she said quietly. "Let me talk to him first. Maybe I can make him understand." Dominic's expression was skeptical, but he nodded. "We'll try it your way, but I'm coming with you, and my men will be in position." As they prepared to leave, Alessandra sent a text to Marco. "Meeting you at the warehouse. I'm bringing him. No violence. I've learned things you need to hear." His reply was immediate. "Just bring Salvatore." We'll talk after. She knew her brother well enough to read between the lines. There would be no talking, no understanding. Marco wanted blood. He won't listen, she told Dominic as they got into the car. But I have to try. Dominic reached across the seat, taking her hand in his. Whatever happens, remember this wasn't your fault. We all make our choices. Your father, your brother, me. And now you. As they drove toward the warehouse, toward confrontation and perhaps bloodshed, Alessandra realized that for the first time in 6 years, she was finally making choices based on truth rather than vengeance. Whatever the cost, she couldn't go back. The abandoned Morgan estate loomed against the twilight sky, a decaying monument to fallen glory. Alessandra hadn't expected Marco to change the meeting location, but his last-minute text made a certain poetic sense. Where better to end this than where it had begun? This is a trap, Dominic said as they approached the gates, his security team following at a distance. I know, Alessandra replied, but it's the only way to end this. The once manicured grounds had surrendered to nature. Weeds pushing through cracked pavement, ivy claiming walls, windows boarded or broken. They parked at the circular drive, the crunch of gravel under tires sounding unnaturally loud in the stillness. My men will secure the perimeter, Dominic said, but we go in alone, as Marco demanded. Alessandra nodded, fear and determination warring within her. If this goes wrong, it won't. His hand found hers, squeezing gently. Trust me. The front door hung partially open, an unwelcoming mouth into darkness. As they stepped inside, motion-activated emergency lights flickered to life, casting eerie shadows through the once grand foyer. Marco? Alessandra called, her voice echoing. I'm here, with Dominic. Footsteps sounded from the library, her father's favorite room. Marco emerged, flanked by 2 armed men. At 30, her brother had their father's build and commanding presence, but his eyes held a hardness Vincent's never had. Little sister, he greeted her, his smile not reaching his eyes. You actually did it. Where are Dominic's people? She demanded. You said they'd be here. Change of plans. They're secure elsewhere. Marco's attention shifted to Dominic, hatred radiating from him in almost palpable waves. Salvatore. Finally. Morgan. Dominic's voice remained calm, controlled. This doesn't have to end badly. Marco laughed, the sound harsh in the empty house. It ended badly 6 years ago when you destroyed our family. Tonight is just closure. Marco, please. Alessandra stepped forward. There are things you don't know about Papa, about what really happened. What I know is that this man, Marco jabbed a finger toward Dominic, took everything from us, left Papa a broken shell, drove you away for years. That's not the whole story, she insisted. Papa wasn't the victim here. He ordered hits on Dominic's people, women and children, Marco. I've seen the proof. Doubt flickered briefly across Marco's face before hardening into dismissal. And you believe him? Over your own blood. I've seen the files, police reports, recordings. Papa was planning to eliminate Dominic's entire organization, including families. So what if he was? Marco's voice rose. That's business. That's how it works in this world. The strong survive. Listen to yourself, she pleaded. This isn't about justice anymore. It's about power, the same thing that corrupted Papa. Marco's expression darkened. You've turned against your own family. For him. His gaze flicked to Dominic, then back to her, understanding dawning. Oh God, you're sleeping with him, aren't you? with Papa's destroyer. The accusation hung in the air, raw and ugly. "This isn't about us," Dominic interjected. "This is about ending a war that's already cost too much." "The war ends when you're dead," Marco snarled, drawing his weapon. Everything happened at once. Alessandra lunged toward her brother as Dominic pushed her aside, placing himself between her and the gun. Marco's men raised their weapons. Outside, car engines roared as Dominic's security team responded to the escalation. "Stop!" Alessandra screamed. "Marco, please!" For one suspended moment, no one moved. Then Marco's finger tightened on the trigger. The shot cracked through the air as Alessandra threw herself forward, colliding with her brother. The bullet went wide, splintering wood somewhere behind them. They fell together, Marco's gun skittering across the floor. Dominic's men burst through the doors, weapons drawn. Marco's guards, outnumbered, surrendered without resistance. On the floor, Alessandra grappled with her brother, tears streaming down her face. "Enough, Marco, it's over." "It's never over," he spat, struggling against her. "Not while he lives, not while Papa's unavenged." "Papa was wrong," she cried. "He started this, not Dominic, and I won't let you die for his mistakes." Marco stilled beneath her, something breaking in his expression. "You really believe that?" "I've seen the evidence. I know the truth." She eased her grip, sitting back. "And I know Papa loved us, despite his flaws. He wouldn't want this for you, throwing your life away for vengeance." Dominic approached cautiously, signaling his men to lower their weapons. "Your sister's right, Marco. This cycle ends here today. No more blood." "Why should I believe anything you say?" Marco demanded, though the fight seemed to be draining from him. "Because I could have killed you a dozen times over the past 6 years," Dominic replied evenly. "I didn't. Out of respect for your father, despite our differences." "Respect?" Marco laughed bitterly. "You destroyed him. I stopped him from becoming something worse than he already was." Dominic extended a hand, helping Alessandra to her feet. "The same offer extends to you. Walk away. Start fresh. Or continue down this path and end up dead or in prison." Marco remained on the floor, conflict evident in his face. "And what about Allie? Where does she fit in your magnanimous offer?" Dominic's gaze met Alessandra's, something profound passing between them. "That's her choice to make." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken possibilities. "You love him," Marco said finally, the accusation now tinged with incredulity. Did she? The realization washed over her with startling clarity. Somewhere between hatred and understanding, between vengeance and truth, she had fallen for the complexity of the man behind the monster her father had painted. "I choose truth," she said simply. "Whatever that means, whatever it costs." Marco struggled to his feet, defeat evident in the slump of his shoulders. "Then there's nothing left for me here." "There could be," she offered. "A fresh start for both of us." But her brother shook his head. "Not yet. Maybe not ever." He looked at Dominic. "This isn't over between us." "It can be," Dominic replied. "That's what I'm offering." Marco's laugh was hollow. "Your mercy feels like another defeat." He turned to Alessandra. "I hope he's worth it, little sister." With that, he walked away, his men following after being disarmed by Dominic's security. The sound of their vehicles fading into the distance left an emptiness that echoed through the abandoned house. "He'll be back," Dominic said quietly. "I know." Alessandra leaned against him, exhaustion hitting her all at once. "But not today. Today it's over." Dominic's arm encircled her, solid and secure. not over. Just beginning. They stood together in the ruins of her childhood home, surrounded by ghosts of the past and possibilities of the future. The road ahead was uncertain, Marco's threat lingering, Dominic's world still dangerous, their relationship built on the ashes of old vendettas. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," Dominic said, turning her to face him, "we build something new, something better than what came before." His kiss tasted of promise and redemption, of choices made and consequences accepted. In his arms, Alessandra felt the weight of the past 6 years lifting, not forgotten, but no longer defining her. 1 year later, Alessandra stood on the balcony of their Lake Michigan home, watching the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and crimson. Behind her, Dominic was on the phone, his voice a reassuring murmur as he conducted business. Legitimate business, part of their shared commitment to building something that could withstand scrutiny and time. Marco had surfaced occasionally, postcards from distant places, brief, cryptic messages suggesting he was finding his own path. The wounds hadn't healed completely, but they had begun to scab over. The empire Dominic had built was changing, evolving under their joint guidance. The shadows remained. They always would in a world built on power. But they worked daily to bring more into the light. "Penny for your thoughts," Dominic said, joining her at the railing. "Just reflecting," she replied, leaning into him. "On choices, on consequences, on how the thing you think will destroy you sometimes saves you instead." His arms encircled her from behind, chin resting on her shoulder. "Regrets?" She turned in his embrace, meeting the eyes that had once belonged to her sworn enemy. "Only that it took me so long to see the truth." "Truth is rarely simple," he reminded her, "especially between us." "No," she agreed, "but it's ours, and that makes all the difference." As the last light faded from the sky, they remained together, two people who had found redemption in the most unlikely place, in each other. Their story wasn't perfect or pure, but it was authentic, built not on illusions or vengeance, but on the hardest kind of truth, the kind that costs everything and gives back more than you ever thought possible.